Hi, I'm Dick Shinton with the Laughing Grizzly Fly Shop in Longmont, Colorado. The fly I'd like to tie for you today is a parachute Park PMD. I call it that because it is a good representation of the very pale yellow-winged pale morning duns that I see up in Rocky Mountain National Park. And it's a parachute style fly which a lot of people have difficulty or dislike tying, and I think I have an easier way, and I'll show you that method today here. I use a dry fly hook with a straight eye, pale yellow 14-aught thread, moose body hair for the tail, yellow polypro for the wing. So let's get started. Once you've mounted the hook in the vise, it's a good time to pinch the barb if you fish barbless. I like to start my thread at the winging point, which is approximately halfway between the back of the eye and the point of the hook. It just provides a reminder to me of where I want to put the wing, and it helps me ensure that I end up with a nicely proportioned fly. Okay, we've brought the thread back to the point just over the barb. I've prepared the moose body hair for the tail, stacked it, measure it to length, tie it in so that the tail is approximately the length of the hook shank. Wrap over the hair, making sure that it stays on top of the hook shank, up close to the winging point, clip off the excess, and now I've wrapped over those butts and I've let my thread hang right at the winging point. I'm going to take a short length of polypro yarn, and I don't want to use this whole bunch, but I will use about 1/2 of it, and that will give us the appropriate size wing. Now I'm going to lay it right on top of the hook shank, and I'm going to tie it down at its midpoint, the midpoint of the polypro, not the hook shank, with about 3 turns. Pull it straight up, make 3 or 4 turns of thread right in front of it, and another 3 or 4 turns right behind it to hold it in place. Now I'm going to start tying up the wing post, but first I want to make some turns right at the base. Now, if you've tried tying parachute wings, you know that sometimes if you put too much pressure on it, you'll bend the wing over and the turns of thread will slip right off. So what I like to do is I make a loose turn around the base while I'm holding it, and then I give it a tug as the thread comes around to my side. And I'm winding up. It takes about 10 to 15 turns depending on the size of the fly you're tying for that post. Now when I've got it up to the point where I want it, I'll wrap my thread back down to the base. Okay? So now I've got my wing post established. I'm now going to come back to the tail, and I'm going to use superfine PMD dubbing. Apply it thinly. Mayflies have relatively slender bodies, so you don't want to have too much. Start wrapping the body right at the base of the tail. tie a slightly tapered body. Up to the back of the wing. Now, I didn't mention the hackle at the beginning, but this is standard dry fly hackle. This, of course, is a saddle hackle, a nice whiting saddle hackle. To prepare this hackle, you want to pull the feather fibers out perpendicular to the stem, and you want to trim a good 1/4 inch or more of the fibers off the sides of the stem. Now, contrary to most practice, I'm going to tie this feather in by its very tip on the side away from me. I've got the curved side up, that's the shiny side, and that's facing up, and the cup side is down. Now, once I've got that tied in, I can come forward to the eye and add a little bit more dubbing. And now I can wrap backwards from the eye and complete the body right there. So now I've got a nice smooth body. I'll let my thread hang there. Notice I've pulled, as I've made that first turn around the post, I've pulled that hackle up to the top of my thread wraps on the post. And now I'm going to wrap over it, coming down toward the body. Now, you can determine how many turns you want to use by how high up you wrap your thread post. Now, I'm going to tie this feather off on the wing post, not on the hook shank. And notice that I made my turns of thread, or my turns of hackle, counterclockwise around the post. I'm going to take my thread, keeping it very low, raising it up just to come over the body, and then I immediately pull it down. And notice that I've got the hackle pulled straight down. This ensures that I'm not capturing any hackle fibers. As I go around the front, again, I've raised my thread just enough to come up over the body, and I immediately pull it down, keeping it under those fibers, up and over and down. And now the only turn of thread that's visible anywhere is here between the hackle and the top of the body, and I'm going to drop my thread right there behind the eye of the hook and make one turn. Now, I'll turn this up so you can see that that hackle is coming right out of there where I've tied it off on the post. I'm going to trim it right there. You can see that I've not trapped any hackle fibers down under there. Now it's time to whip finish the fly. I like to use this small whip finisher because that'll help me get those turns of thread right in there over the eye. Trim that off. You can see the wing still looks like two pieces, but take a brush those together. That'll bring that wing together right there. Now we can trim it off to length. That length is about one body length. Cut it a little bit long because when you cut it, it's going to spread out and shorten it up. I like to cut it at an angle like this, but it doesn't really matter. You can cut it straight. And there's your Parachute Park PMD.